so we need an approval of the agenda.
Yeah, there was a capital expenditure request for a HIPAA filter for the coronavirus. So why don't we add that to new business on the agenda, and then I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, so we can add it, that's fine, but we need to make a finding for the minutes that the need arose subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and it requires immediate attention.
So moved.
I'll second.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, motion passes. The agenda is amended accordingly.
So that will be new business 2.
New business 2. Mark, could you lead us in the flag salute, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I know where it should be. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mark. Margaret, would you do our invocation, please? Could you do our invocation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Heavenly Father, be with us tonight, Lord, as these important issues come before us tonight. Lord God, help us to stay within the boundaries that are given by the California Health and Safety Codes and our state ethics. Lord God, there seems to be a lot of problems in the world today. We know that you're in control. We know that we can count on that. And so we leave it in your hands. Be with us tonight, Lord God. We have a heavy agenda tonight. Lord, help us to make aware in the community of how important it is to have things up to date and at the best that they can be, because we are the best country, Lord God. You have made us that way, and we want to stay that way, Lord God. We do not want to fall behind any of the standards that you have set for us here. We ask this in your name, Lord God, and know that you will hear us, Lord God. Thank you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And Director Bush, would you mind reading the mission statement for us with your wonderful voice?
I'd be happy to.
Our mission statement reads as, we will provide high-quality, efficient patient care services that respond to community and provider needs. We will provide leadership in health promotion and education for our patients, residents, medical staff, employees, and community throughout the district.
Thank you, sir. Our attorney, Scott Nave, could you please give our closed session report?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Dr. Finstead presented a medical quality report to the board, and council and the board discussed the two matters of existing litigation, Timms and Quinn. No action was taken.
Thank you. Item E, this section of the meeting is set aside for public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to make any comments on tonight's agenda, or items that are not on the agenda, rather? Okay, seeing none, then item F, the consent agenda. These are a list of routine, non-controversial items as determined by hospital staff, and all these will be approved in one motion unless a member of the public or a member of this board wants to discuss them. And so I know of two at the moment. The Board of Directors meeting minutes we need to pull of February 5th, 2020. And then the budget preparation schedule. It's the second to the last bullet item for 2021 is off consent. I'd like to have questions on that. Is there any member of the public that would like any consent agenda discussed? Okay, seeing none. Any board members? Any additional items for discussion off consent? Okay, seeing none.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the February 5th meeting minutes and the budget preparation schedule for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you. Okay, so we will address the meeting minutes directly after the consent agenda. And then we'll move the budget preparation schedule to new business, item 3.
Item 3 under new business.
Okay, so John made a motion. Do you have a second?
Yes. Second.
Director Casas? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Abstaining? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Yeah. So the meeting minutes for the Board of Directors meeting of the February 5th, 2020. One of our members caught earlier that the titles of the board members are from the prior year, and so we've all been reassigned responsibilities, so those need to be corrected and that sort of thing. Was there anything else on those minutes that anybody saw that needs to be discussed? No. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so that brings us to,
I think just a point of order, I think we still have to do a motion to approve, correct?
To accept the,
Yeah, it's an
Yeah,
action
it
item.
says corrected, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
thank you, John.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you. All right, so that brings us to the reports. And we will start with our foundation report. We have somebody from
Accepting the award for Ms. Hyatt.
Good evening. Hope you're doing well. So I'm here today to give a final report on the Heart Walk. It turned out we have a lot more walkers this year than we did last year, so that was great. The teams that had the most laps was the SOS Dog Rescue. Judge's overall choice was the Donahoe family. The best team costume was the KVHD Unicorns. Oldest combined teams was our skilled nursing. Then the oldest walker was a Fernie Hernandez, and he was in his 90s. I don't remember his age. The youngest walker was Riker Lanza. 16 and above for the men's was Jared Donahoe. 16 and above for women was Erin Lanza. Girls 16 and under, actually it'd be 15 and under, it was Eden Lanza. And for the boy, it was Chris Levesque. So we were real excited about that. There's some things we're going to change for next year. To date, we've raised $10,767. Do you have any questions?
Just a comment, thank you to the foundation for the plaque for my grandma who passed away. I know there were a whole bunch of people that passed
Yes.
away this last year.
We had quite a few this year.
Yeah, but that was very nice. I wasn't able to make it to the Heart Walk, but thank you.
Thank you. Hearing none, that's my report.
Thanks, Debbie. Okay, the auxiliary report. Thank you. Cindy?
Well, I don't have a lot to report tonight, but good evening to everyone. The thrift store is doing awesome. We're getting multitudes of clothing again in, unfortunately, but it's spring, so everybody's doing spring cleaning. And we're possibly going to have a bag sale on starting the 1st of April. And we are very eagerly awaiting our gate opener. That gate's getting harder and harder to push, especially when the weather's cold. The gift store is doing great also. She ordered a lot of new merchandise before she went into the hospital for her surgery. So if you're ever out and about, check it out because she's got some really nice stuff in there. In February, we had our potluck luncheon, and that was a big success. We have a new member to be voted in next week, and we have a couple of interviews set up for next Tuesday. And then the Heart Walk, we have 3 teams, and we had a ball out there. Thank you very much. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Cindy. You did catch that the gate was approved on the consent agenda?
I heard.
Okay.
I thought it was just a can of WD-40.
Been there, done that.
Okay, Dr. Finstead, are you still here?
I am.
There you are.
Down here at
You're
the
at the table. Okay.
All right, so the medical staff had 3 meetings last month. On February 11th, the infection control meeting committee met and reviewed the responsibilities, qualifications, and functions of the infection control professional. Also reviewed the surveillance plan and the upcoming, or the current infection control plan for 2020. They also reviewed a number of policies and procedures and reports, including the monthly hospital-acquired infection for the skilled nursing facility, blood culture reports, skilled nursing infection control risk assessment reports, antibiotic usage in the skilled nursing facility, which include urinary tract infections, skin and wound infections, and respiratory infections. They also discussed under the topic of emerging diseases that the World Health Organization had named the coronavirus COVID-19. So the meeting was about 3 weeks ago. Gives us an idea of how fast things are moving. The Pharmacy and Therapeutics Committee met on February 14, reviewed and approved policies, quite a number from the skilled nursing facility. A lot of these were basically related to evaluation surveys and stuff like that to kind of get things in order. Also, the committee reviewed, made some changes to the hospital formulary, getting rid of a medication that's used in the emergency room that we rarely use and is extremely expensive. And then we reviewed regular reports, including blood usage, blood cultures, medication, error prevention programs, and the use of restraints on acute care. Then the Medical Executive Committee met February 18th, approved the credential files that were on the consent agenda, approved the policies that were on there. We also approved the 2020 annual formulary review and reviewed the first section of the medical staff bylaws that are under revision. And that's the end of my report, unless there are any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Okay, Chief Executive Report, Mr. Liu.
Okay, thank you. You are going to hear a fair amount tonight about coronavirus. Fortunately, not by me. Mark has actually got a presentation that he's going to make, which is why we kind of turned the tables this way so we could see the television. And so it's just something obviously is, I'm sure everybody's been keeping up on. It's just become just such a huge issue. We've been in contact, with CDC, with the state, county health department, the State Hospital Association, and a whole host of other agencies and so forth with the latest information that's going on. We've had meetings with our staff and with our physicians to talk about our strategies and those kinds of things, and I'll let Mark kind of get into some of that. But we're very much on top of that. I have a press release that we're going to go ahead and put out. I think from a perspective of trying to keep the public apprised with real information. There's been rumors going around that we had 7 confirmed cases in Nevada. We had
comments that were being made that we had 2 confirmed cases in our hospital. None of that's true. Okay.
Is that all because I went to Asia?
I tried to squelch that, whatever, but and so anyways, there's just so much misinformation going on out there, and so we want to try to take a much more proactive stance and making sure that we're communicating on a routine basis to try and get the best current information we can out to the community. And so we'll do that through the papers, we'll do that through the radio, and so forth, So anyway, I'll leave that for more. Wanted to give a quick update on our employee work injury situation. It was one of our strategic goals this year. We went back and we looked at our actual workers' comp claims here at the hospital for the last little over 3 years. Pleased to report back in 2017, I'm not pleased to report this, but the progress we've made is 2017 we had 15 workers' comp claims with 289 lost days here at the hospital. In 2018 that dropped to 11 cases with 138 days lost. 2019 we had 5 claims with 15.5 lost days. Huge drop.
Nice.
And obviously we're running well so far for the first 2 months of 2020. So I've got a report which I'll continue to track and so forth. This is important, again, because, as we had seen our workers, some time ago, we had a really, really high monthly workers' comp claims, our workers' comp premiums that we were paying. And that premium is based upon a 3-year rolling average of your costs. And so it's called your mod rating. And so, it takes time, if you have a couple of bad claims and stuff like that, it takes time to clear those off your books. And so, like I said, I'm again, based upon what I just reported, our situation for next year should improve dramatically, going from 289 lost days down to 138, and then 15 for the next year. So, again, I think we've been training our staff with physical therapy, have been proper lifting techniques and these kinds of things, and I think it's making a difference. And so obviously we're going to stay on that. We keep communicating with our staff, obviously think about what they're doing before they do it, and so forth. And so, but we're going to contract this. I think over time we will see those costs come down dramatically. So, but I was very pleased to see the actions that the staff have taken to kind of help. And again, this is for their own longevity as well. Obviously, anyone who's had a back injury knows it's not a one-time thing. It's a lifetime injury in many cases, because it's so easy to re-injure your back and those kinds of things. And so preventing them in the first place is absolutely the thing we want to do. So anyway, just to give you a quick update on that. I just received information from Cal OES. Unfortunately, not the news I was looking for. We were notified that we've been placed on a waiting list pending additional funding availability. The state had received the $750 million that I had a conference call with them the other day. That money has been earmarked. Again, the concern is that some of the projects that were approved may not get past FEMA. And so therefore, that's what the waiting list is, that some of those could get funded through that process. And as I shared with them, I says, again, some of us hospitals who are up against timeframes for getting work completed in order to keep our hospitals operational beyond 2030, just can't kind of sit here and not do anything waiting to see if you get more money. In that regard, we have actually reached out to Congressman McCarthy's office. We have a meeting tentatively set up for next, is it Tuesday? Thursday, yes. To sit down and talk with his staff about the possibility of going after some other FEMA funds or other federal agency funds to see if we can't get something else in here in the meantime. And again, a lot of this, we've done the work already, and so we might have to repackage some of it, but I want to keep moving this thing forward. The other thing that we will do is we're going to begin looking at opportunities to continue to move the project forward, but in small pieces. Being able to pick up some space here, we can move some other things around that might free up space that we can begin doing a small project and bring up to compliance. and those kinds of things. And so we're gonna discuss those things, you know, and then those will be done, you know, through our board building and planning committee, and so forth. But like I said, it was unfortunate. Like I said, they just said there was just a huge, you know, outpouring of need that was generated. I'd love to find out the list, to see the list, to see who got approved. I have my thoughts on that, which I'll keep private. But anyway, it's you know, we're not going to stop. We just keep moving forward, and because we've got to get the hospital compliant one way or another. And so that's what's going on there. We are in process of getting ready for our state licensing survey and SNF. Staff has been working very hard on that, making preparations and reviewing records and all kinds of things. So again, we applaud the efforts that they're making, and they've been through this on an annual basis, and they always do a great job. And so we really do, and anything they need, just let us know that we need to get help with them on. There is a requirement that the hospital post board expenses, and I'll pass this out. And this is going to actually be posted to our website, so it'll be made public. Might have more than you need there, but anyway, what this is that we went back, and we're going to do this on an annual basis. Fiscal year 2019. So this is July 1st of 18 through June 30th of 2019. We went back and posted by director all of the expenses that occurred month by month for their meeting attendance, for if they went out to the ACHD conference, those funds are on here. Any benefits that they were provided through those funds are on here as well. And so, and again, that was yearly. We had some transition with Dave came off midway through that period. Gene came on, and then Kay came off, and then Sherry Montes came on for a portion of that time, and then Ross came on. So, but all of that is listed on here. And all totaled, there was $53,000 in total expenses. Interestingly enough, of that, 31,000 or almost 32,000 of that is actually a benefit that was inured to a former board member, and that was something that it's not doable anymore. That was able to get his medical benefits paid for by the district, and so. That is something that'll be out there until he no longer needs health benefits or whatever. And so it's a grandfathered thing, and that was actually 30,000 of the 53,000, 31,000, 32 of the 53. So all totaled, excluding that expense, which we really have no control over, it's roughly about $22,000 a year, $21,000 a year in total compensation to the board for expenses and meeting attendance and those kinds of things, which I think is very reasonable. So anyway, that's the report. This, in the interest of transparency, this will get put out to the website and so forth. And again, this will become an annual report, just so that people know where to talk. So, and then I want to go ahead and hand out. This is a press release that I've asked. Deb has to put out. This is the first one. And basically in response to the COVID outbreak. And again, she'll make that available to the radio stations and to the newspaper. I don't know if you've had a copy to give Deb yet.
She already has it.
She's got it. Okay, great. And so, like I said, we're going to take a very positive approach on this and just kind of keep people educated about what to do and so forth. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and if unless there's any questions for me.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to comment. So I heard with the whole the outbreak with the coronavirus that FEMA has, like, I don't know how many billions of dollars that are just sitting there earmarked, and they're trying to redirect those funds to coronavirus. I don't know how that's gonna impact our ability to find funds for the construction project.
Well, today they got 8.3 billion approved today through the House. It has to go through the Senate, which I'm sure it'll clear through very quickly. I think there's additional FEMA monies, like $8 billion that was available that's non-designated at this point in time, which I'm sure is for future emergencies or things of that nature. But, and that's why we want to have the conversations with Representative McCarthy about, can you find 14 million? You know, or whatever. So, yeah, like I said, this is getting lots of attention, and you know, we are we're finding, you know,
Promise it worked this afternoon.
Rob, is there any question?
Yeah, are there any other comments or questions of from Tim's report? Okay, seeing that, the board member expenses, the Armstrong expense, I wasn't aware of that. That blows me away.
Yep. That was a board benefit a number of years ago, and it is not available. You had to serve at least 12 consecutive years on the board.
Before
And you
that.
get it in perpetuity?
Yeah, if it was offered at the time.
Right.
Yeah, so there were other directors that received the same benefit, but they did not meet the requirements to receive it in perpetuity.
Okay. Is it possible to, as a maybe an asterisk to this spreadsheet, the date that board decision was made and who the board members were that made that decision? Maybe what the vote was? Because I don't want my name associated with this.
Oh, no, this was not a recent board decision by any stretch.
This happened in the late 80s.
Like predated me ago.
Would there
Long
be a
time ago.
possibility of buying him out of that? Because he probably is eligible for Medicare and everything, would be cheaper for him, or it would be advantageous for him to take a settlement. Do you see what I'm saying?
Would you do it?
Yes, I would, absolutely.
So I think Brad was elected in the 90s, so it would have been either late 80s or early 90s that it was voted on. So that would have been your favorite
Yeah,
benefit, Bob,
maybe,
maybe.
probably.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
benefit could have existed from the 60s or 70s.
It could have been,
And he
yeah.
just stepped into it
Right.
as a
He was
director
the
at
last
the time.
one.
He's just the last one
Jim,
alive.
could we look
Who gets it?
into a discussion about?
Yeah, let me, I don't know, I gotta go back and relook at the board decision that was made at that point.
Yeah,
in
but
time.
I'm
I'll go
gonna-
over that with Scott, yeah.
Negotiate with him to buy him out of whatever, maybe give him 2 years in advance and wash it out.
Again, it's like, who would do that, you know, take a 2-year buyout or something you're not gonna pay for the rest of your life, you know? So, we can talk about it offline, so. I hear you, it's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's not.
I'm just not sure he'd go for it.
He would,
Or anybody
trust
would.
me. It'd be a smart thing for him to do.
And I don't know if it's possible to track down that decision and who made it, but I sure would like to.
It's probably the minutes.
Yeah.
of the-
Yeah, so let me explain what happened. Is at one point in time, agencies were allowed to offer benefits to directors and the agency would pay for them. And they could include lifetime benefits. And it was seen as a way to attract people to get on boards. Because you guys make so much money for all the time that you put in anyway. So it was seen as a way to attract capable people to run for boards. And it was a nice little perk for them. Because you guys don't get paid. I mean, you're getting pennies on the dollar for the work you do. And so there would not have been a vote to provide this to Brad. It would have just been, this is a benefit available to all directors. And if you meet the requirements, then you can receive them.
It was actually a part of the board bylaws, and that's where the change was made to eliminate that clause was in the board bylaws.
Okay.
So in 1995, 96, the legislature passed a law that said you can't do that anymore. And so that's why the bylaws were changed. It's because state law changed.
Okay.
But it wouldn't have been a vote specifically to offer it to Brad. It would have been all board members are eligible for these benefits. Just as today, you guys can participate in the benefits that the district provides to the employees on the same terms and conditions as the employees.
Okay.
So the search in the minutes for something related to Brad will be fruitless.
You won't find it. Okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't exist.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. And Tim, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm appalled.
There are not many people who are still getting these benefits, but they are around.
Okay.
Some of the school districts had the same
Yeah.
thing, and some of them are getting.
Yeah. Okay. Then, Mark, Chief Nursing Report.
Alrighty, so, at the board P&P meeting, I discussed a nursing networking call that I had been a part of, where I kind of talked about some transfer delay problems that we were having locally, but it turned out it's California-wide, and so I just wanted to report that discussion is going forward up into Sacramento, and there's a lot of people talking about some of these transfer delays that are happening.
What's the transfer delay?
Well, what's happening is when I have a patient who may need a higher level of care transferred to a Bakersfield area hospital or outside, doesn't have to be Bakersfield, but we're no longer allowed to contact the ER per se. We have to contact a transfer center, which in turn would then say, okay, this meets criteria, we'll let you talk to the ER, or this is criteria for a direct admission, what's their insurance information? And so we're discussing some of these problems that we're seeing at a higher level, and right now, I don't know where that's going to go. We're still experiencing some of those transfer delays, and it all stems around the amount of patients that are being held and seen in different ERs around the state. I mean, it's a real bad problem. I'm not saying it's exclusive to us, but I do know that way back when we had a doctor talk to a doctor in an ER and they said, okay, we'll take your patient, it was a lot easier to get things done. But now we're being kind of sent to a transfer center that is the gatekeeper for where patients get transferred.
And it's a concern because this happened a number of years ago when I was in LA. It was called economic screening, of patients be transferred to your facility and so forth, and we basically told our staff, you will not give out information as to a patient's financial class. Mm-hmm. They are not allowed to make a decision as to whether they accept a patient based on what insurance they got. And so if the patient needs to be at a higher level of care, you take them if you can care for them and so forth. So it's kind of, and I'm not accusing them of doing that by any stretch. I'm just saying that obviously the fact that they're asking us for a face sheet or things of that nature is concerning to me. And so I had actually asked Mark to bring this up with the CNO group, which elicited some responses we had anticipated.
A little more than what I had anticipated,
and
but
obviously we've shared that with the hospital council, and now this has been shared statewide through all the hospital councils. So there's going to be some people looking into this.
it essentially kind of, I think you were probably going to ask about EMTALA, and this kind of bypasses that a little bit, in that if it's not an emergency room to an emergency room, it doesn't apply. So if it's a direct admit to the floor, if they think that the patient could be directly admitted, that's how they're avoiding that. And they can say, our ER is full, but we'll put you on a waiting list for a bed assignment upstairs or something like that.
That's their information.
So,
Did the law change? Because it used to be a mandate that it would be physician to physician.
So I'll move on because I don't have the answer to that, but I think that's the very question that's being asked up there at Sacramento.
And you can't do the wallet biopsy or wallet triage, whatever it's called. That's illegal.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So we're just
that's why I got a lot of discussion and
Okay.
notoriety.
like fire.
Now I don't know that I want my name associated with that. Just saying. Okay, so let's get into this real
We
topic.
weren't alone. Let's put it that way.
I can't take credit for this slideshow. A friend of mine, a colleague from up north, kind of sent this to me. She found it, and it has a lot of good information for really down to earth kind of what started the coronavirus, what we're seeing, and kind of how to prepare for it. So it's really for the public to understand it a little bit. So where did it come from? It's a coronaviruses are a large group or family of viruses that cause illness ranging from the common cold to more severe diseases such as MERS and SARS. And you've probably heard of those things. It's a new strain, and it's not been previously identified in humans. That's where the coronavirus began in Wuhan, Hubei province of China, the end of December last year, and now has spread through China, Italy, South Korea, Iran, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, and the U.S. So think about, if you were to think about influenza starting in December till now, how many cases of influenza might we have seen? Probably a million or so, maybe even more than that. There's about 24 million cases right now in the United States. And I don't want to minimize this at all, but there are only 91,000 cases of coronavirus, so it doesn't proliferate like the influenza does. So I want to be mindful of that. There's 91,000. This is as of March 2nd, 2 days ago, Monday. Confirmed cases throughout the world, and 105 of those cases in the U.S., Washington, Oregon, Illinois, and California, with 43 positive cases as of March 2nd. Of the 43 cases in California, 24 of those are from residents returning through San Francisco International Airport or LAX. They came from either China, Italy, South Korea, or Iran. So the other 19 cases are from the following, whether there's 10 travel related, there's 5 person-to-person, and 4 community transmission, which is probably the most alarming. They got it from an unknown contact, so to speak. So how does it spread? The virus is thought to be spread mainly from person to person between people who are in close contact within about 4, 5, 6 feet of each other. It's spread through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes. Excuse me. These droplets can land. Yeah, we need. Does anybody have any alcohol? No, I'm kidding. So, you got some alcohol. Thanks.
I think that's the type he meant.
These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby, or possibly be inhaled into the lungs. So, spread from contact with infected persons or surfaces or objects. That's another way that they think it might be spread. It may be possible that a person can get COVID-19 by touching an environmental surface or an object that has the virus on it. They don't know how long it can last on environmental surfaces yet. Again, it's an evolving issue, and so they just don't know. There's a lot of unknowns with this one so far. So some of the things, the best way to prevent the illness is to avoid being exposed. Amen. To this virus. So, however, as a reminder, CDC always recommends everyday preventative actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases, including avoiding close contact with people who are sick, avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth, stay home when you're sick. That's a big one. Stay home, contain it, sequester yourself. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue and then throw it in the trash, and then, you know what? Wash your hands. Wash your hands. That, I can't say that enough. People don't do it enough, so wash your hands. I'm doing the fist bump thing now, with instead of shaking hands, so it's kind of a lesser of the contact. So clean and disinfect frequently touched objects. We have met with Cheryl's crew, our the housekeeping crew, to make sure that they're carrying around the alcohol wipes with them and wiping doorknobs and environmental surfaces all day long. We're doing that I was looking today and I was seeing that on some of the doorknobs there's even a little white film that I know they were there and they wiped it down and it dried on that surface. So some of the things that they think about, the coronavirus versus the flu. Coronavirus is airborne precautions, meaning that it can float around on dust particles, they think. Flu, droplet precautions, just that's the 5 to 6 foot radius. So they're still concerned that coronavirus may go airborne at some point. They don't know that. It's caused by one virus now being referred to as severe acute respiratory coronavirus 2 or SARS-CoV-2, and they coined that term COVID-19. I don't know why. Coronavirus D19. So, okay, so antiviral medications are being tested, but there are none available for this virus. And there is also no vaccine at this time. It's in the process of development, but I might warn you that vaccine is available for the flu that is fairly questionable as its validity also. So we all get the flu vaccine. Hopefully we don't get the flu. Let's pray for that. So again, 91,000 cases, 6 deaths in the U.S. as of March 2nd, and those, I believe only one of them in California.
It's 11 as of today.
Oh, it's 11 now. So it's 2 days later, 11 deaths. And the deaths are coming from people who are really have other comorbidities. They're not really strong, healthy people are recovering and coming out from this. So
Yeah, 9 of the 11 are from Washington. They're all from the same site in Washington.
same place, right? So 1 billion cases worldwide of influenza with an average of 9.3 million to 45 million cases in the U.S. per year. And you can see the statistics for deaths worldwide and deaths in the United States. So symptoms. If you look at the two, the difference is kind of interesting. Body aches and headaches and fatigue are not on the coronavirus list. So you got to think about those things. Symptoms may appear 2 to 14 days after exposure. Fever, cough, shortness of breath can result in pneumonia. So that's why some people that are admitted with pneumonia can be what they call a PUI, a person under investigation. They can be mild or severe, even fatal in rare cases. For the coronavirus influenza, symptoms are usually sudden. Fever or feeling feverish, cough, sore throat, runny or stuffy nose, muscle or body aches, headaches, fatigue. So there are a few differences. We got to be mindful of those. The other important thing to know is the travel history or the exposure history, where they've been or who they've been in contact with. Okay, so I'm going to get into a little bit of the personal protective equipment for healthcare workers. The World Health Organization says that if you're the triage nurse and you have somebody that's coughing with a cough, give that person a regular surgical mask, but you should be using an N95 mask, which is a particulate filter. It's a much more advanced mask until you take the history and find out that they're not a candidate, or maybe they are, and then you put them in isolation. The CDC, Centers for Disease Control, states standard and airborne precautions. So airborne precautions are we're not able to do that at this time. That's why we have an emergency purchase on the desk for a HEPA filtration unit. Bob Easterday has indicated that he can make a room or two of our facility with this portable device, negative pressure, exhausted outside, so it filters the air in that room pretty impressively. Bob, you want to talk a second about that?
Oh yeah, because we have 2 existing, and then we're hoping to purchase an additional unit that will allows us to pull a lot of air out of the room through a HEPA filter, exhausting it directly outdoors. So that way, by going through a HEPA filter, it does not put anybody in danger who might be, say, walking along the sidewalk near the patient rooms. And so, yeah, we can, and we've discussed whether, you know, we can do a way where we can do multiple rooms with one unit, if we were to get an, you know, a larger influx. So, yeah, so we have a plan to do either single rooms or multi-rooms, if this were to happen.
What we need right now, and again, we'll talk about more, is the fact that this unit will most likely be placed in our emergency department, because the units we're talking about are inpatient rooms.
Yes.
And, you know, you want something in your emergency department that allows us to handle a patient that has infectious issues going on. So that's what this unit would be used
And
for.
tomorrow I will be working on possibly turning our single room in ER into a negative pressure room.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll get accomplished tomorrow if everything goes.
And
well.
I am hoping to go to the foundation to ask for the $5,400 that you see for that unit. But,
No.
okay. Well, we'll just have to buy it ourselves.
Mark,
then.
wouldn't- if we had quite a few of those, they're treating them in-home now, right? I mean,
Isolated home, yeah,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, they
Yeah.
send them back home and we treat them there, or,
Well, it depends on their level, their severity of their illness. If they need medical treatment and they need IVs and they need things like that, then we'll admit them. But yes, they're encouraged to stay home or go home afterwards
or we could go there.
and treat it. Because there's no real treatment, we're going to treat multi-system failures and organ failures and things like that in the hospital setting.
What's the maximum we could hold? We could service, or how many people?
If we house them together, 6 maybe, in a protected environment. Bob, would you
Yeah,
agree with that?
That's not very many.
No, but
Oh, for here,
that's what we can do right now. And hopefully we don't get one versus.
Hopefully I don't have to take over the surgery suite
And
and
there,
start.
again, we've had conversations, you know, we have the emergency tents that we get from the county. We've got 2 of them. You know, we've had discussions about setting those up out front, you know, as a pre-screening area, so they're not coming into the hospital. I mean, those can be used as you know, isolation units and so
We've
forth.
got
So
ways of treating
we have
it
ways
all.
of expanding that, yes,
Okay,
if we need to.
Yes.
So, but in terms of with what we've got now, that's about what we can handle.
So that brings me to the next slide, treatment. There is no specific antiviral treatment recommended for COVID-19. People with COVID-19 should receive supportive care to help relieve symptoms. For severe cases, treatment should include care to support vital organ functions, as I was saying. Basically, it depends on the severity. In influenza, antiviral flu drugs are taken to decrease the severity and duration. It's recommended you get that first dose within 2 days of onset of those symptoms, though. So you got to make sure you're really on top of that. Right now, we currently have an adequate supply of the N95 respirator masks, and I'll leave it at that.
If we run out, can we get any?
No.
Well,
Yeah, it's not.
that's not necessarily true.
Well, most-
The answer is we cannot buy them. Let's put it that way. They're not
Could
available.
we make them out of cloth? I mean,
No.
what,
No.
yeah.
So,
The issue is right now, the state, matter of fact, the governor declared a state of emergency today. His plan is to open up the stores, the 4 N95s and these other things. Federal government is also looking at that as well, because they keep stockpiles of these things. And so, they're even looking, with studies that were just done, even looking at masks that have been on the shelves, because they have a shelf life, and they're finding out that even some that have gone 5-10 years beyond the shelf life, they've tested those and they are still performing exactly as if they were brand new. So they're saying that they're going to allow those to be used and distributed out to the community. So we've actually reached out to the county to
In
see
an
if we
emergency,
can't
could
get
you
more.
put a handkerchief over your head and put rubber bands? I mean, we could run into problems.
These are recipes.
yeah, make it a wet handkerchief.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
No, I don't
Yeah,
think
there-
so.
see,
There are options, but the answer, I mean, I made it a very short answer, but we have a good stockpile here at the hospital. Right now, you can't purchase them from suppliers, but Tim is right. Kern County has stockpiles of this stuff that I'm on those committees where we have these stockpiles. And now that there's been an emergency declared statewide, they can break into those stockpiles and supply them if an area needs them.
Yeah, Christina reached out to Jeff Ferris today.
Yeah.
So.
They've got thousands.
So in prevention, avoid close contact with people who are sick, avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth, stay home when you're sick. This is a problem for hospitals, especially hospitals with not a lot of staff. We have to make sure our staff stay healthy. So I'm encouraging all the nurses with anybody that is coughing or sneezing or presenting to the hospital, they should be wearing their masks and they should be giving those patients a mask. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue, sneeze into your coat pocket, something, just to prevent it from going out into the air. I heard a statistic from my infection control nurse today that I don't want to repeat, but it's pretty scary when you sneeze how much germs come out of that sneeze and go into the air, just so you know.
Per drop.
Per drop, yeah. Billions. So clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces using a regular household cleaning spray or wipe. Follow CDC's recommendations for using the face masks. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If there's not soap and water available, use an alcohol-based hand washing.
If soap isn't there, yeah. That like I said, in every agency, that is the single biggest thing that they said, wash
Yes.
your hands. And that's what needs to get put out to the community. Wash it frequently throughout the day and so forth.
I'm going to go ahead.
That's not available, or apparently, soap and water is better than nothing, right? I mean, I'm talking about
absolutely, yes.
Water's good, yeah.
I mean,
Well, there is, I mean, quickly, you can, by the way, if you can't find any hand sanitizer around, 2/3 cup of 99% alcohol, 1/3 cup aloe vera gel.
We got some right here.
That's it, you have hand
You can't buy that.
Yeah.
Okay.
but alcohol could
Drop a
become
little
scarce.
scent ball in it if you want it to smell better.
So right now, as far as testing is concerned, our lab does not do this test. We have ordered there's this particular type of swab that you need to have. You can't just have a wooden swab with a cotton Q-tip on it. It has to be a Dacron type swab stick. We have those on order so that we can take the specimen here, but it still has to be sent out. There's only 10 laboratories in California that do that testing. We did hear recently that they were going to try to expand that to 20 laboratories, but it is a send out. So
Could we have the board meetings just say we did start having some, I don't think I'd want to be around the hospital.
at LAX.
We can have meetings from home. We can do
Yeah.
Facebook
Okay.
or Skype or whatever.
So we could make it.
It's interesting because one of the things I was just reading today, one of the reports was says any of your employees that can work from home and telework, do it. Don't keep them in there because and that's the hospitals obviously are a little different because it's hands-on care. So you got to have people here. But
There's talk
some
about just
businesses that
decreasing
can't do
your
that.
travel, not going to crowded places like Disneyland and things like that. I'm sure they're being impacted by this.
And I'm sure that the staff here is keeping an eye on each other too. If somebody shows up showing symptoms of illness or something.
Get out.
It's gonna be quick.
That's right.
So I don't think I'm gonna go into the lab and stuff. This is probably a 45-minute presentation. I don't want to take that much time, but
You got the high points.
so you get the kind of the gist of it. They don't recommend any kind of treatment except for just the organ failure type things where you would normally take care of those with IV management and things. So that's pretty much it, guys. Any other questions? They do say that you should avoid travel to China, Iran, Italy, Japan, and South Korea. Just saying. Level 3 travel health notice. I looked that up and it says only in emergency if you need to go. Just don't go if it's not necessary. And that's
Yeah, so for the record, I did not go to China. I went to Indonesia and Japan.
okay.
But
And it's been longer than 2 weeks since you've been back, and you're asymptomatic. So you're okay. I'm sure Dr. Finstad would say you're cleared.
That's why I'm sitting down here.
With a bottle of alcohol.
But yeah, okay. But on that same note, maybe this is just one of the unknowns. But I thought I heard about a case where one of the people that were diagnosed didn't show some symptoms until after 14 days. Is that just another unknown, or is that just a rumor, you think?
I haven't heard that one, and I've kind of read every CDC, all facilities letter that has been put out, and I've not heard that one. So
Okay.
I also heard a lot of things about, we had 2 cases in the hospital, which I probably would have known about it if it was the case. But anyway, yes, ma'am.
When you had that drill, the Ebola drill with the county,
Yes.
and you said things didn't, the procedures needed to have work.
Okay.
So do you feel confident the county has done some, and have you done some as well?
I think they learned a lot from that exercise. I really believe that. They went back kind of almost. They really were nervous about how they performed here, I'll say. I mean, Orion could probably attest to that too, but he was part of that, and they were struggling to understand how to even put some of the equipment together. So I'm guaranteeing, I'm pretty sure they went back and they trained on it. They know what's happening. And I will say that we were able to deploy one of the industrial strength HEPA filter units in that room and we have a piece of plywood set up that we have an exhaust port out there, and so we were able to create a really good negative pressure environment for that room. And it was, but again, they're industrial strength, and they're mechanically looking. The one that you're looking at today is a healthcare related one, and it's portable. It moves. It's small footprint, so it fits in a room, and so it's pretty easy to use. The HEPA filter maintenance needs to happen on it. So anyway, that, folks, is my report.
Thank you. Any questions or other comments?
Yeah.
Timur?
Still, when I came back, nobody wanted to be around me. So.
We still don't.
So there was a case study. I can go through this real quickly if you like. I forgot about this. If a 66-year-old male presents to the ER complaining of cough, fever, and shortness of breath for 3 days, denies travel outside of the U.S., patient reports that his spouse has recently been sick with similar symptoms since returning from Disneyland with the grandkids. Those kind of triggers are what the triage nurse should be looking for. Crowded spaces from travelers from all over the world at Disneyland, So these are some of the steps you take. Ask the patient to wear a surgical mask. I think we kind of covered most of this stuff. The ER nurse should be donning her personal protective equipment with the N95 masks, face shield. I don't necessarily think that gown is very important at that point, because I probably wouldn't take it home with me if the patient's coughing, but anyway, gown, gloves, that's why we're getting this kind of area set up in the ER to have that contact. And at that point, we'll put a person in an isolation room like what Bob was talking about, and then we'll limit the contact even with the healthcare providers. We'll only have one nurse working with that person in and out of that room, and hopefully not in and out of that room often. You go in, you do 5 or 6 things, you come out. You don't go in with one thing, come out, go in with another thing, come out. There's ways to handle exposure time, and that's what we're kind of focusing on.
This virus, Mark, is it another reason not to get old?
So, obtain 2 samples.
Yes. Yeah, old folks don't do well on it.
Things to remember: your best defense against viruses is don't get old. I mean, proper hand hygiene and cough etiquette. Stay up to date with CDC guidelines to better serve your community and your patients. Follow the CDC triage guidelines and sampling collection. Notify CDC and your local public health department. That's the other thing. If we have a suspicion or a case that meets the criteria, we're to contact the local health department so they can be abreast of what's going on. Talk about delayed transfer times. Notify the World Health Organization of all confirmed cases within 48 hours.
I'm assuming
That
that's
will
in
ever-
the public health department.
That will never be
CDC,
something
that'll
we
notify-
do, yeah.
Right.
Okay, I think that is it. That is the end of that presentation.
Thank you.
Hopefully it wasn't too long.
That was very informative.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Chief Financial Officer report. Mr. Riedel.
Going back to refill it.
Just saving batteries, Chet. Thanks.
Well, I'll talk about operations and finance for a few minutes, and deal with the month of January. I don't know how many of you, like me, over time enjoyed either the TV or the movie presentations of the A-Team. The first time when it had George Papard and Mr. T, or the second time when it had Bradley Cooper. But I did, and one of the things that I enjoyed about it was when they would finish a mission, if it went well, go back to George Papard, other than put a stogie in his mouth, what he would say is, "I love it when a plan comes together." And for the month of January, I'm going to say, I love it when a plan comes together.
You look a little bit like George Papard, too.
And what that actually means is we pretty much did the right things in January from all sides. Our medical surgical services were up, as they have been since we began putting some of our SNP patients in swing beds, those that qualify. And we did it again, and even had, so we moved up over 7 as an average, 7.4 actually, as an average daily census in medical surgical. The not so bright spot was still the census in the SNF. Nevertheless, they managed their variable costs well, so they mitigated some of the problem of lower volume. The emergency room was a super bright spot. We had actually almost 700 visits, 692 visits in the emergency room. And we have a very ancillary intensive, or meaning that they use a lot of services for emergency room visits, needed or unneeded. We do use a lot of services. And our outpatient visits that had come down a little bit, those are the referred outpatients, came back up a little bit. Well, it was over last year as well. Our primary care clinic and our specialty clinic both did well, as did the retail pharmacy scripts. So the volumes really helped us out immensely. We actually, I like it. One of my goals normally is to have a month be over $10 million in revenue. We weren't quite there, but we were close. We were 9.898, so 9.9 million we generated in gross revenue. As compared, now last year that was a good month too. In January we had 9.8. So we actually came out with a little bit more collectible, just over higher than 2.442 instead of 2.427. The one thing we did do as well, though, is we actually, even with inflationary factors, and staffing issues, we actually had our operating expenses, our available expenses, came out less than they were a year ago on the same month. 2.261 versus 2.296. So operationally, we actually generated $180,000 worth of profitability from the operating side. Last year, again, it wasn't bad, 130, but then we also had a great month in non-operating. We had the quarterly investment come in on the LAIF. That's 23 grand. We had some investment income other than that come through. And so we actually, where a year ago we only generated about $9,000 net, non-operating over the long-term interest. This year we had 45,000. So we actually had a month of $225,000 profit. The plan came together for the month of January, and that's just really important. When you do the things right, you get the right results. What that does is it actually allows us to be at $287,000 for these 7 months, because we were almost at break even. Not quite at budget, but a heck of a lot better than the $338,000 negative that we were at a year ago. That's the big story about January is like, we did well, do it again. The way I like to say it. You did well, do it again. If you can do it once, you can do it twice. If you can do it twice, you can do it 3 times. What you want is you want a 12-peat. You know, your 3-peats and 4-peats in sports, well, we like 12-peats. Okay, so basically, I'm going to say on the cash side, it was fine. Our cash hasn't been bad. Our receivables are, from putting a new system in, have been out a little bit, but we're working on that. We did have to send out $868,000 in matching funds, and I took that from money we had set aside for some things that we hadn't used. I did not dip into our reserves at that particular point. So $868,000 went out. And then actually, I said last month that we would actually put at the bottom of our income statements a notice about those IGT funds. If you happen to look at the year-to-date, you can look at the month and you can see it came out in that month as well, but you can see that our year-to-date receipts for IGT has been 1.275 for 7 months, and our year-to-date payments have been 1.505. So, and the only real difference is the $868,000 that was just done in the month of January. So relatively in and outs are close, except it's just a timing issue. And actually, unless there are questions, since we had that presentation tonight, I'm going to let that be my report.
Blame it on me, Chad.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I love it when a plan comes together.
Thank you, Chad.
Did we give you a raise or something to make you do the numbers better?
Give me that report again, fool.
That wasn't bad. Okay, item H, old business, there is none listed. Item I, new business, and we have, first up, the strategic planning proposals. So, Tim?
The governance committee, and again, we've had some conversations going on with the board, that we want to begin doing a strategic planning process. And so we were asked to go out and try and find some companies that could help us with that process. We looked at a couple of companies, and I'm trying to find out what page it starts on. Gotta get past the audit here. Okay, thank you. There we go. in growth management center, what I did was through the hospital association, we have the ability to ask a question through them, and they put that out to all the CEOs statewide, and we'll get a response back in terms of who you're using for this particular service or whatever. And so this was a company, Growth Management Center, was one that was recommended to us that has done a number of hospitals. So Heidi and I interviewed them, got a proposal back from them. There's some similarities between the two that are here tonight. They are both basically a 2-day process. It's kind of a 12 to 5 one day, and then you start it again the next morning. Kind of give you an opportunity to sleep on things and come in the next day and start talking. A lot of times, we've kind of run the whole planning through in a 1-day process, and you kind of get burnt out, and by the end of the day, you're really not thinking. And so this was kind of a refreshing approach, that, and I understood we used to do this in the past, but, since I've been here, they seem to be primarily a single-day event. Like I said, this company was highly recommended. I was very impressed in our interviewing with this gentleman. He is actually was a former board member up at Tahoe Forest. Right, yes, and was their board chair for a number of times and got great experience. And it's a great hospital system up there for critical access hospital. He's worked with a number of critical access hospitals around the state, and so he's got great experience there. He's worked with the Veterans Administration and a number of other healthcare type organizations, as well as a number international companies, In and Out, Harrah's, so he's done planning on all kinds of levels. Kraft Foods, there's a list there on page 89 of the companies that they've done planning work with. And so he knows what he's talking about, and that was very evident in his presentation to us. Their plan, basically, it's as I said, it's a 2-day process. There's meetings that are held beforehand. There's meetings that are held afterwards, obviously, to put together a plan. And their proposal was for $21,000 plus expenses, which is they're all like that. And so the second one was a group from Health Tech. And Health Tech is a company that we've had a fair amount of experience with. They did our annual report, the Critical Access Hospital annual report. They've done survey preparedness surveys for us and so forth. And so we reached out to them. They also have some extensive experience in doing this. Again, it's a similar approach that they do a half day one day, half day the next day. There's a lot more pre-work that's done, in interviews and those kinds of things. So theirs was much more labor intensive, and it was kind of indicative in the cost. It was roughly a $45,000 cost to do that survey. So it is substantially more. And so there was a third company that I reached out to, Pacific Health Consulting Group. That is a group that was used by Current Health Systems to do their strategic planning. Didn't hear from them for a while. I didn't hear from them earlier today. And the lady who headed up that process, and she did a really good strategic plan with them. She is retiring and turning this process over to one of her other staff up there, senior staff. And so she sent me some information today. His background is not hospital related. It's all health plan work. And so I didn't feel, and I didn't put anything in here, that will benefit us in some respects. I really like the idea that the first group that we talked to, they're from an insider's perspective. They're a board member, for many years of a very successful critical access hospital that has done tremendous amount of work in developing outpatient programs and those kinds of things. And that's really one of the things that we want to focus on in terms of our planning process, because that's really what's going on with the industry right now is, you're seeing smaller and smaller inpatient units and more emphasis being placed on treating patients outside the hospital. And so, my recommendation is obviously to go with the first one, with Growth Management Center. And so these were shared with the governance group and so forth, and that would be my recommendation back. So,
If I can
there's
add a
any
couple
questions?
other things, Tim.
Yeah.
The Growth Management Center, their approach is that we as board members and the managers of the hospital develop the strategic plan ourselves. We hash it out, we talk it out, we develop it. With the other group, they do a lot of background information, they do extensive interviews and data gathering, and then they hand you the strategic plan and we edit it.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it seemed like it would be more valuable to be able to develop it from the ground up. I think there'd be more buy-in to it. There'd be people would have a reason to want to participate and build on that.
Yeah.
So I agree with your recommendation. That's the way I was leaning to.
Okay.
Could we be more educated on what we're doing? Like skilled nursing, where's the sweet spot? We got 74 beds. Would we be better to have 60 beds or 80 beds? But to have a crew working there, we've got the expenses. Where should we be?
That's what a lot of this is about.
Well, we should know basically some of that information before we go into it. Like the emergency room, we're doing fine. We're making money. We don't need to be bigger, and it's going to be a bigger emergency. The heart hospital is not much bigger than our emergency room is right now.
Yes.
It's smaller. It actually they have their issues there as well. For
You
patients
guys
there.
have a look into that, and
Yeah.
no disrespect to you.
Yeah.
We need to know
Absolutely.
and look
Well,
into it, and the community does.
And this is why, like I said, I think it's important having somebody leading that effort that's been there, done that kind of thing. And I think that was what we were impressed with this group, that they can do that and educate the board and work with you guys.
Will that all
and
be
with us.
addressed? Because right now, it seems like we're spending money that we don't need to, that we don't have, and putting ourselves back to where we can't make payroll, we can't pay health premiums.
We're nowhere
We don't
near
wanna-
that. We're not in that
I know
situation.
we're not, but we don't want to go there.
No, I don't either. Yeah, but you want to spend money to do this right. I think that's the important part, from my perspective and my recommendation. So, like I said,
Yeah, it could be worth it, and the cost is, there's no comparison. I did notice that the other one was 21,000 with $1,200 for expenses, and the other one says 45.
Where would
One
the,
and expenses not even included.
where would the site be?
that's for us to decide.
Would it be local?
Yeah, we would do it
Not
local.
Bakersfield or nothing like that?
No, we would do it somewhere local.
So the community
Well, the
would,
community has to participate because it's
Community
the
would
board
be
is
involved,
together, so
right.
it's a public
Right.
meeting. Yes, absolutely.
should the community look at what we're looking at? Should we,
No, this is our call.
This is our call. Yeah. They can participate in the process. Absolutely.
If there's anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this, I'd certainly open the floor to you if you have any input. Now would be the time to speak up.
well, I don't have an opinion about it, but
Mr. Chair, it's been years since we've had a strategic planning meeting, lunches, anything like that. When you look at the 21,000 and you take it over the years that we didn't spend the money, and you divide that up to the education you're going to give the board of directors, because there's always something that we don't know about. Let's face it, everything changes all the time. I can't say, well, like myself, it's deductible, but you do have to spend money for education or your crew if you expect your crew to make the important decisions. Yes, it's a lot of money, but I know the difference between going to a conference and not going to a conference. And learning what's current today is so important to keep up with everything that's going on in the state, especially. I can look at both sides and say, this versus this is it important enough for us to spend that much money? Yes, it is. We have 3 new board members. When you look at the scale of 1 to 4 years on a term. And there's things that these 3 board members have never encountered and never thought about making decisions about. I think it's very important for the board to have education. And I would vote for it.
Yeah, I'm not, the money is incidental. Are we gonna address what needs addressing? Are we gonna keep walking down the same road we're walking, which is?
This is a board-led issue.
Yeah, we've been talking way too long about us getting together and having a strategic planning movie. This is just getting somebody in who's a pro, who's gonna streamline it and moderate, basically, and there's a structure to it. So, because, we'd be wasting a lot of our time if we left it to our own devices, quite frankly.
And I think there's another part of that too, is that he brings what's been successful at other places.
Yeah,
I mean, that I think is important too. If we did it ourselves, we wouldn't have that.
We're always talking about going out and seeing what other districts and other critical access districts are doing, and he brings it to us. So on that basis alone, I think it's well worth it.
Yeah, the cost is not. It would be worth it if it's effective, if we get some benefit, the hospital gets benefit out of it, so.
Any comments, John?
No, just that I was, in the governance committee, I was really satisfied with option 1, the growth management, compared to health tech. Like everybody has reiterated here, it seems like the gentleman has a lot of experience working with district hospitals and other businesses related to strategic planning and working directly with the board and the community, facilitating that process. So, yeah, I would be in favor of
Okay,
growth
now,
management center.
okay.
But as far as finding a venue, yeah, we'll still have to figure that aspect out.
Now, you said you and Heidi interviewed, okay. I mean, why wasn't the board involved in interviewing them? Is it you guys that's running it, and we're sort of?
We were asked to go find companies to do that could do this and bring them to the committee. That's what we did.
Yep. And the committee discussed it, and honestly, with what I read in their proposal, I think it's going to be exactly what we're looking for.
Okay.
Honestly.
Yeah, good.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
So my question is, the gentleman that we're talking about, is he from a rural community? Is he from a city, or
He's from Truckee.
He's from Truckee. So he's from a rural community. So
Yeah.
he does have that history.
Right.
He commutes from Reno, but
Experience.
Well, and the other thing that we discussed in the governance committee was, I think with the other option, you're going to be dealing with people that are, from Tennessee or someplace, I thought Chet said. So you've got that travel issue and people that are not familiar with a rural community out here in California. So
When could he do it? When would we be able to?
Well, that'll be the next step. Once we approve this, we can go ahead and begin talking about scheduling. We've got to, obviously, and we can work with the governance committee on that in terms of identifying times and when they would like to see this happen, and we'll check availabilities and sites, obviously, those kinds of things.
Do
But
you feel like this is the way to do it?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've worked with a number of firms before, and I've been very impressed by this gentleman. So,
Do we need a motion, or are we there yet?
We need a motion. Yeah. We need a motion to authorize Tim to execute a contract with this vendor.
Can I make that motion?
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay, I make the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
John seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstaining? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay, the next item the capital expenditure request.
Oh, yeah.
For the negative pressure.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah. At this point, we've heard a little bit on it. Is there any, do you want any more detail?
I don't, I know what these are, what they do. Bob's talked to me about them in the past. And I actually been places where they've been in use. And because, it's leaked out, somebody said that we maybe, as a foundation board member as well, will be approached to, cover this expense. I mean, I certainly cannot speak for the board, but, I don't see any issues with it. If I
Can I make a motion that we purchase
authorize
it
the purchase,
and then ask the foundation to help us out with it?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the public or the board?
Well, I'll just add that the units we have, which came through the county's program for emergency preparedness, for the part of the trailer, they are more of an industrial thing. They're also quite large, so they take up a lot of space in the room. This is designed to be in a patient room. It's more of a vertical device, so it doesn't take up such a big footprint, and it's really designed to do better what we need to do.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion with the board? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you much.
Okay, the third item under new business was the budget preparation schedule. And that was tucked away in our consent agenda. And I just had a couple of questions about that. Here it is. It says tonight we were going to be presented with general assumptions on board, and that it was going to be discussed in the Finance Committee meeting on February 22nd and then presented at the board tonight. And I didn't see it in the minutes, and there wasn't anything on our board agenda for that. And I just wondered how important that step was in the timing.
It's not a dramatic timing issue. The board assumptions have been done. They have been gone to administration. Administration hasn't gotten back, so I've kind of delayed it till the next go around, but they have been done. One of the things that it will do, I know Director Parks was just asking about the making sure that no thing, well, some of the things, what I have found is that rather than just try to bring the board a budget or the end of the budget, it comes in pieces. We start the middle of the fiscal year and it comes in pieces. Now, we may have things that come up with the strategic plan that changes it, but you will get what we basically do as we do this. For example, the general assumptions at first gives us a parameter and we build on that. And then we build to the volumes that are based over the last 4 years, plus year to date, plus the managers coming up with if they want something different. And that comes to the board. And then, so you'll see things build that you can introduce into the strategic planning, or at least have a basis for what you do there. There's even a business plan involved in this. And the timing isn't as critical as long as we be able to get into the next year's reporting as it is to have buy-in, I guess you would say, and completeness of the items. I will tell you, for example, that the capital budget request did go out to the managers. We just got them back this week, and I began to review those already. They will be put together in a summary, and then they'll come to the Finance Committee.
Okay. It looks like a really sound process to me.
And I think that's what we were trying to do was to, the check put forth to the Finance Committee was it's an organized thing. Some of the dates might slip here and there, but the point was the steps are the ones that we're going to hit to make sure that we get all these things done.
And sometimes what we'll do is we'll stretch it out for the manager. A manager, we may not have, we'll get to a point and we'll say, well, we only have these this many from the managers, we better contact them again. Give them another few days. And
Are we on schedule?
To me, the timing isn't as critical as the completeness and the accuracy and the buy-in of the board that you involved.
Okay, so the step of having the board basically be presented with the general assumptions, having that occur in April is not gonna mess up the process?
No.
Okay, all right.
Because we're gonna keep going through the other parts of it. And you may get that, for example, we may have, I'm sure we have something in there for the next phase, whether it's statistics or whatever. That'll come, it may come at the same time.
Okay. Charlie, did you have a question or comment?
No, I'm looking at this preparation schedule, and I assume that we're on point with it. That we're hitting these marks.
It looks too organized.
We're trying to get.
I mean, we could've- truthfully, we probably could have pushed the assumptions into the finance committee. There was enough on the agenda, and it was close enough that it made it a little tougher for Heidi to get all the things in there, so.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any member of the public want to comment on this?
So
How do we,
we're gonna push this to April then.
This is
It's a flowing
informational
document.
more than anything else.
Yeah,
It's really not, yeah, for,
what I'm hearing is these are guideline
Yes.
target dates, not
Right.
not hard and fast deadlines.
correct.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Shut up.
Then we need a motion to approve the schedule.
So moved.
John
I will second.
and Charlie. Any other comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chet. Okay, we are to the point of item J on the agenda. Director's comments on items not appearing on the agenda. And we'll start with Mr. Blake.
I don't have anything this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Director Cassis? Nada?
I didn't have time to write what I wanted to write today, to talk about today. And I brought this subject up before. I think that we are experiencing at this time, since the government of our country is experiencing a lot of negative input, that we are experiencing the negative input in our community. And I think rather than writing out a complaint about whether there's people that needed correction or anything like that, I think I would just ask that if anyone thinks that it's easy today to do what this hospital does or what the employees do, that they should take another look, because these are hard times. These are game-changing times, and we really need to look at the positive picture instead of trying to find things to pick apart about, and put both of our feet in the circle. That because it works more so, far more than the negative input. I'd like to say that there are some things going on in the community that are depressing because they are so misguided. If all of us can do our part to lift instead of trying to push away or push down or whatever, lift together, we can get a lot further and help our district to grow also.
Thank you. Director Parks?
Whenever I talk, and I don't want, I sound like I might disagree or whatever, the hospital, the emergency room, the skilled nursing, they're wonderful. The clinic, we are great up here. some of our directions may be, that's up to us to help change, we should do it, but I don't want to sound negative. I hope I don't. Just critical about some of the ways we do things, but the hospital itself is awesome in every part of it. And the auxiliary, it is amazing how they're dedicated and do what they do. And they got little ones. Every one of the auxiliary members have a little protege or whatever you call them, trainee. And
Minions.
and then the foundation. Debbie is awesome in there. So you guys thank you so much. But that's
I want to thank Director Parks for always lifting us up. I want to say thank you to the administration for many of these decisions that are being made. We're headed on the right path, I'm confident. I want to thank everybody that was involved in putting together the Heart Walk. I looked at it, it was a few things that we learned that were glaringly obvious that we can fix for next year with little effort. So, but it went well. The turnout was terrific. Everybody had a wonderful time, and I just thank all the volunteers and everybody that set it up and made it happen. So it was a fun time. Look forward to next year.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, I do have a couple things myself. I too want to thank the foundation and Jeanette Rogers and all the volunteers that put that Heart Walk on. It was terrific. It was a great event. You look around and all the people that participated in that, you realize why Kern Valley is such a great place to live. We really have community involvement, and through the foundation and through the efforts of the volunteers, they brought all those folks together for wonderful cause. So kudos, good job. And Cindy, thank you, and the auxiliary for what you do, and I hope you enjoy the gate. I hope it makes your life easier. Last month, I believe it was last month, we learned that the hospital has a 3-star rating out of the 5-star system, so that's what these 3 stars are.
and this on mine too. It makes me sideways on my name.
It makes it lean.
I'm having some t-shirts made that say, ask me about the 3 stars.
Yeah, ask me about the 3 stars. So that's what these signify. I'm so proud of our hospital, so proud of our staff that made this happen. What an amazing facility, and we get this independent verification that we get such a positive rating. So I'm gonna wear this around and make people ask me whether I'm a general or is it something else. So. I have a question. The board members, at least I have, and I believe the other board members have been receiving email requests from a member of the public, which is great. I love the involvement. I think that's a really positive thing. But my question, I guess, is to council is, when we get questions via email, I don't want to violate the Brown Act. So do we respond individually? Does that end up being a serial meeting? Should we ask staff to respond if the questions are to the board members, so it doesn't seem that the staff can actually shouldn't be responding when they're asking a board member for something specific, their point of view on an issue. And so I don't know if you need to answer tonight, but maybe give some thought, unless you know the answer.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward answer. You guys are elected to represent the public, and if your constituents have questions for you, you can answer those questions. If they send an email to all 5 directors, then it does become a Brown Act issue, and perhaps it's appropriate for the board chair to respond and say, the 5 of us cannot engage in this conversation because of the Brown Act, but I'm happy to address it. If someone emails all of you individually, then all of you can reply individually, and that's entirely fine. That's why you're elected. You're here to represent them, answer their questions. Something to keep in mind is directors only speak for the agency when they're authorized by the board to do so. So your responses to those constituents should reflect your opinions, and individual directors cannot make a statement on behalf of the agency unless they're authorized to do so. So, but other than that, it's just really straightforward. They're your constituents, and absolutely you should respond to them if you want to.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Scott.
Or refer to staff for.
No,
If they choose to, right?
you can refer it to staff, but they're your constituents, right? And they elected you to office, so it's appropriate for you to respond. Now, if there's an operational question or something that addresses like specific employees, then we need to be careful there. But if it's a policy, high-level question, or your opinion on something else, it's entirely appropriate for you to respond.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, well, that's all I've got. Unless there's any other discussion, then our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Chet. Oh,
Thank you.
that was a good report.